Going into the next one.
Got a nice setting right here.
Awesome.
Welcome everybody, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Excuse me.
What did you see? You want to sit on the log? It's a great spot. Welcome, welcome. Make yourself comfortable. Got a flat spot right here. Takes across the edge. Well, greetings to all of you. We're very happy that you would come and support history, and I'm just happy to have you all here. You know, the people of Green Bay are doers and dreamers, and they're not afraid to fail. I'm here to tell you about the classical music culture that was such a big part of Green Bay. There were many successes, but there were also many big failures. My name is Josephine Cleary, and I was active as a pianist and organist and harpist in the Green Bay area during the early to mid 20th century. If you read my obituary, you'd learn that I was a very accomplished musician. But you probably don't know much about the wonderful music community that existed here in Green Bay. Now, during my life, it was so exciting. I was the youngest of 5 siblings, born to Mary and James Cleary. I was born March 19th, 1893, and I grew up in the St. Patrick's Catholic Church community and lived at 306 North Chestnut all the days of my life. My musical talent was encouraged by St. Patrick's Catholic Church and the school and St. Joseph Academy. I was encouraged by my teachers to pursue piano studies, and I had the good fortune to study for 3 terms under Alexander Rab, the distinguished Hungarian piano teacher at the Chicago Musical College. Oh, what a thrill to be absorbed in the study of music. Later, I also studied with Alex Enna, Walter L. Larson, and Ludolf Ahrens, and I was a faculty member at the Larson Conservatory of Music, part of the classical music ensembles and orchestras here, including the Kraft Orchestra and the Palinfonia Symphonette. I was Christ Episcopal Church organist, silent movie organist, and I was a music teacher at parochial and public schools throughout Green Bay. I was very active in community theater, and I spent my whole life dedicated to music, and I loved every minute of it. Now, I have heard that the only culture that there is existing in Green Bay is the Green Bay Packers. Well, the Acme Packers didn't begin until 1919. So what did we do to experience culture back then? Why is there such a tradition of classical music here? Well, as Green Bay became more larger and was more economically stable in the 1850s, German immigrants brought over the tradition of vocal and band music. Their local Turner organization and other German social groups held gatherings which always included singing and playing. The Green Bay City Band right here in Green Bay is over 120 years old, and it has played every year except, of course, during the recent pandemic. Radio was invented in 1895. Before then, people had to travel to larger cities to hear high-quality classical music, and few people could afford such a luxury. The exposure to high-quality performances on the radio increased people's interest in classical and other kinds of music. So by 1910, there were over 30 private music teachers here in Green Bay and four private studios that taught everything from opera to drama. The desire for professional performances grew, but such performers were very expensive. Few small towns could afford such quality musicians. Well, way before I was born, in the 1870s and 1880s, the Philharmonia Society was formed. That depended mostly on vocal performance, and it would do selections from opera. While this first attempt at developing a classical music group failed due to declining interest, small groups of musicians continued to meet and practice. Just as I entered my 20s in 1913, two important men came to Green Bay, Walter L. Larson and Alex Enna. Both of them founded music schools, and they were friendly rivals for students, many of them who became professional musicians. Now, these two men are responsible for starting the Green Bay Symphony Orchestra. Alex Enna founded the Green Bay Symphony Orchestra in late 1913. The 40 players gave their first concert in March of 1914, and in the following season, Walter L. Larson was a violinist and previous concert master. He took over the orchestra, and he brought in professional musicians from the Chicago Symphony to play with the group and led the orchestra until it disbanded in 1922. Now remember, I am a teacher, so there's going to be a quiz later about all these dates. Now, the second attempt to develop a symphony orchestra in Green Bay failed in 1929. The local musicians from the failed Green Bay Symphony Orchestra were the basis for the new California Orchestra. Former symphony players continued to practice together. In 1929, Rudolph Ahrens, Lawrence Conservatory faculty member, organized them into a choral and orchestral group lasting until 1942. They performed classical works written by Professor Ahrens and other musicians, as well as famous music. And expanding to about 40 players, the California provided 13 years of performances. Rudolph Ahrens died, but his concert master, Herman Daimler, recruited 16 players and formed a chamber of music ensemble called the Green Bay Symphonette. They debuted at the Whitney School Auditorium in 1946. After Daimler's death, leadership passed to Ralph Poulter. I'm sure that's a familiar name to many of you if you've ever been to any concerts at West High. The orchestra was reorganized in 1960 to become the Green Bay Symphony Orchestra, eventually hiring a full-time professional conductor. Now, this orchestra was a big success in Green Bay for many, many years. Now, in the 1920s, there was a movement to sell subscriptions for a slate of concerts. The cost of hiring these professional, expensive musicians to come to smaller towns would be shared by many. This was a nationwide movement, and that is what began the now 95-year-old Brown County Civic Music Organization. A subscription to 4 concerts cost $5, which was still a lot of money, but wonderful performers came to play here. As a young man, the young, wonderful violinist Isaac Stern performed here more than once. Pausing in the 1930s and in the 1940s, an effort was made to restart the organization, and it still exists today. While this is a success story, others are not. The Larson Conservatory, the Brown County Civic Music, and attempts at local professional symphonies all failed or took a long hiatus during World War II and the Great Depression. But really, what didn't take a long hiatus during that terrible time in our history? In 1994, the Green Bay Symphony Orchestra became an organization of paid professionals. And after many wonderful years, declining interest and financial difficulty forced the Green Bay Symphony Orchestra to dissolve after the 2014-15 season. But all is not lost. Prior to 1994, the Green Bay Symphony Orchestra was a community-based organization relying on musicians from this area, very few of whom were paid. When the orchestra decided to develop a professional level orchestra, most local players were not accomplished enough to earn a spot. So, a committee of St. Norbert College music professors then organized the Civic Symphony of Green Bay. And that relies on volunteer musicians and performs at the Meyer Theater. Out of the ashes of the Green Bay Symphony Orchestra, a community orchestra still survived. Now, during the 1920s, I continued to offer piano lessons with the Larson Conservatory. The highlight in my life was to accompany Walter L. Larson as he played the violin in a live radio performance on Chicago station WIBO in 1926. So exciting, so exciting. And I continued to teach music at Catholic and public schools, and I stayed busy as an accompanist and church organist all my life. And my final position was as a music teacher at Alloway School. Hopefully I inspired my students to love music all their lives as I did. And I'm glad to know that there's a youth symphony here located at St. Norbert College. It is over 50 years old. As for me, I never married. And I lived with my sister Bessie in our family home on North Chestnut all the days of my life. I was diagnosed with cancer in 1955, and I passed away in March of 1956. Now, do not despair of the failures in establishing a symphony orchestra in Green Bay. St. Norbert College Youth Orchestra, UW Green Bay's Widener Philharmonic, as well as Brown County Civic Music and the Civic Symphony of Green Bay are now keeping the music tradition alive. If you love classical music as much as I do, don't get discouraged by organizations that fail. Keep looking for performances and supporting these local efforts to keep the culture of classical music alive. Who knows? Maybe a professional Green Bay Symphony Orchestra will rise again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. and
Great
supporting
job.
me. These are my siblings.
So
This
right
is
here,
me,
let's see.
and my parents are there.
Oh, the whole family. Oh my.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
The whole
And
family.
it's a little flatter that way.